Welcome to our August Plotly Hangouts. These Hangouts are a space where you can meet and interact with data scientists and data analysts merged in the world of data visualization, Plotly, and Dash. You will often hear from our guest speakers, just like Jeff today, about their professional experience, the journey that brought them to where they are today, as well as the lessons that they learned along the way. Your participation, this is like the most important part, your participation in the Hangout is highly encouraged, right? Community members, the more you participate, the richer the Hangout will be. So feel free to unmute yourself or join us on camera or ask our speaker any questions that you would feel comfortable asking yourself, right? Maybe you're more of a chat person, right? You don't want to go on camera, that's completely fine as well. Definitely use the Zoom chat feature to share your comments or questions at any time. Some people have difficulties finding the chat, so I'm going to go in the chat right now and say hello. Welcome, everybody. Cool. Now you should chat should pop up. Just reminding you that this session is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube and or LinkedIn later this week. One last thing before getting started. I'd like to remind you of the Figure Friday weekly data sets. Figure Friday is a recent initiative that we started in Plotly to get people to practice their Plotly and Dash app building skills themselves and with others, share their creation with others, and then attend Friday sessions to hear feedback and learn from others about their Plotly creations. I'm going to add to the chat a link from the previous week's Figure Friday data set. This was historical elections in the US from 1976 to 2020, and we got pretty impressive Plotly visualizations and Dash apps that were submitted. So we're excited about that. The current week is about Spotify music data set, and on Friday, we're going to have a new data set. All right, so to get started, I'd like to introduce Jeff as our guest speaker. Jeff Butler is the Executive Director of X-Value Adjustment Trading at CIBC, which is a Canadian multinational banking and financial services corporation. His role focuses on credit, funding, and collateral risk and cost management for the bank's OTC derivative portfolio. He leads a data science and technology mandate that includes developing reporting, exploring new blockchain technologies, pricing strategy, and cost optimization. In today's session, we will be highlighting Jeff's career journey in banking and data science, his work at CIBC, and you might hear things like combining portfolio management and data science, summarizing large complex data sets in an interactive way for a broad spectrum of users, and transitioning into data science from a background in math and finance. Jeff, welcome. How are you?
Good, Adam. Thanks for having
me. Thank you for joining us. So to get started, Jeff, can you share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I have a background in engineering, math, and analytics. I've been with CIBC for 18 years now, largely in what's known as a resource management group, and I'm passionate about most things digital and AI.
Wonderful. And can you tell us a little bit about your role in CIBC?
Yeah, so I'm on the XVA trading desk, which sits within our resource management group. Our team is primarily responsible for managing credit and funding risk on the over-the-counter derivatives book.
Credit and funding risk and over-the-counter
derivatives.
And for those who are not within this this industry, what can you clarify?
Sure, yeah. So a derivative is basically just a contract between two entities to achieve some purpose. So we might have a corporate client that comes in and wants to, say, hedge their interest rate exposure or their foreign exchange risk. And where my team comes into that picture is we sort of sit at the center of the trading floor between all the various trading desks, whether that be equities, foreign exchange, interest rates, what have you. And we basically manage the credit and funding risk associated with those derivatives. And so if you take credit risk as an example, you can kind of liken it to home insurance. And so, if you own a home, you pay an insurance company a premium monthly or yearly or whatever have you. And the unfortunate event that your house burns down, the insurance company will make you whole on that loss. Right. In the same way, a trading desk would come to us, and at the inception of a trade, they'd pay us the market cost of that credit risk. And then in the unfortunate event that that client defaults or goes bankrupt at some point in the future, we would cover them for any loss that they might have. And so that loss would sit with our desk to kind of manage out. And then we also manage the risk of that credit risk through time. So because it does change in value through time.
So I can imagine that managing credit risk or likelihood of default is just crunching and visualizing a lot of data.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of data. I mean, we have a huge kind of Monte Carlo engine that runs every night, talking on the order of 8 trillion calculations. We don't save all of that down, but there's various different components, especially kind of being a centralized desk. We're not just exposed to one asset class. We deal in commodities. Again, foreign exchange, interest rates, and so there's a host of different things, as well as you layer in client attributes, understanding the risk nature of each of our clients and things like that. So yeah, there is quite a few kind of different aspects you can look at things from a data perspective.
Okay. Now I do want to go. We are going to go into Plotly and how you use Dash to kind of better understand the data and trends. But even before that, I want to talk a little bit about your role. What you said is as your role managing credit risk. This is what you're doing right now. Has this been your role throughout all your tenure at CIBC?
No, so I mean, I started off in credit risk management right around the onset of the financial crisis in 08, 09. And so, maybe an interesting place to start. And I spent about 2.5 years there. And at the time, the only place that CVA or that credit valuation adjustment we just discussed was calculated was actually in our credit risk department. So, I started looking at it from there, and then an opportunity opened up to actually kind of build a desk up and build a management function around that. On the business side. So around, I think it was 09 or so, I switched over my group's had different names over the years, but what's now our resource management group. And, we've built out, that Monte Carlo engine I mentioned, and, a risk reporting framework, P&L, management framework. Over the years, done various different things, from trading to assisting with, looking at new trades and new business. I currently manage, a significant portion of our technology and quant mandate on behalf of the desk, working with those departments in the bank. And then more recently as well, trying to, expand our data science and analytics capabilities as well.
And so you've been at the bank for how long now?
18 years as of, I think, 2 weeks ago today, actually. So
Congratulations.
Thank you. I made it.
What I feel like in today's day and age, a lot of people tend to, whether because they prefer or like to, tend to switch jobs every couple of years. But I personally find there are a lot of advantages in staying in one place for a long time because of the institutional knowledge that you gain and for many other reasons. What are the advantages that you find in staying in one place, being in a particular role for such a long time?
Yeah, I mean, I think you see both. At least here at CIBC, there's people who have been at various financial institutions, and I think that has huge advantages. And you get to see how things are done at different firms and in different markets. So I think that's that's great experience. And at the other side of the coin is someone like me, and there are other examples of people who've kind of spent their careers here. And I think you do get a depth of understanding with an institution. Relationships that you build, across the firm. You get to know things really in depth and kind of, as a product owner, for example, just the insides and outs of things and being able to put, kind of a stamp on it in some sense, or at least, have that involvement and the ability to take on kind of those in-depth roles and see something through a life cycle or a lifetime, really.
Yeah, and that in-depth knowledge can potentially be used for other things, right? If you ever wanted to, or a person like in your position become a consultant because they know so much about the particular subject, wouldn't it be such a big transition, right?
Yeah, I think it is. It is, at least in the XVA space, I think it's fairly, I don't know what the word is. It's not, it's fairly siloed in a sense, and it's fairly specific knowledge for that realm. But there's you understand derivatives and trade pricing and relationships and things like that. That stuff's transferable, and then the data science stuff. There is a high level of transferability, I think, across industries. So yeah, so I think it's a mix depending on for subject matter versus more kind of general
Right.
application of things.
Cool. Just a reminder to our community members that are have joined us, or my colleagues, anybody really, it's completely open. If you do have a question, you want to come on camera, or you just want to put it in the chat, please feel free. Jeff talked a lot about things that are very specific to the banking and financial industry. If you have more questions or curiosity about that, or you just want to share what you do, definitely feel free to do so. In the meantime, we are going to jump into more of the data side. So you mentioned that as time passed by, the most recent role was involved a little bit more data analysis. How did the tools, I mentioned, I know that now you use Dash and Plotly, but Jeff, how did the tools change over time when it first started in 2008, 9 until now?
Yeah, I mean, we're a bank, and so using Excel is almost like breathing. And I don't really see that going away per se. So Excel's been a huge part of it. VBA, macro type stuff for maintaining processes and obviously calculations and things like that. When I started, it was in what was called a credit risk business architecture role, and so I was very fortunate. I'd say, looking back, to be exposed early on to SQL, and I'd never used SQL SQL before, and almost right from day one in that my first day in the seat, kind of you're exposed to that, and so it's been a huge advantage for me just having learned that many years ago and being able to kind of grow in that, and it's obviously huge for I think data science, being able to speak that language, but over the years, especially recently too, and I look at our firm and our data analytics journey, I think, has been going for several years now, but we've onboarded tools like and frameworks like Databricks, cloud. We were, that XVA, that Monte Carlo engine I mentioned, was the first app in the whole bank actually on cloud. I think that was back around 2017 for our compute. We've onboarded obviously, Dash Enterprise and uses of Plotly. And so yeah, so I mean, it's really it's been a journey and an evolution, and I think that's definitely heated up in the last several years. And now kind of the next phase is that we have these frameworks and these tools, and looking to centralize data. How do we kind of operationalize a lot of that and really drive business value and growth from it?
One thing that it seems to be very common in today's world is just access to a lot more data. So I'm sure in the banking industry you've experienced that as well. The amount of data that you can receive and handle nowadays compared to 2009 is probably a few orders of magnitude bigger. How does that impact your work? Like, do you have to use certain tools because of that, or how does that change anything?
Yeah, I mean, Excel can only handle so much, and so
Right.
Excel absolutely should be the tool of choice for a lot of use cases. But as you get bigger and things need to update kind of quickly and refresh quickly, that it kind of quickly falls down. And so you can go to things like like a Jupyter notebook, or an on desk IDE or something like that for Python. But then as the data gets kind of really big, you need to go to kind of these more, kind of structured tools like Databricks, where you can leverage things like Spark and, clustering and cloud and things like that. So it really depends, I think, on the use case. But you need, as the data gets bigger, you need these kind of tools to be able to succeed in data science, I think.
Right. Because I have a question here, Jeff, from Jeannie. She says,
Yep.
Hi, Jeff. Do you mind talking about AI in the financial industry? Is it, for example, is it being implemented quickly or facing any roadblocks?
Yeah, I think so. I think maybe the banking industry might have a bit of a stigma for being slow on this stuff, but I know at least at CIBC, I'd argue we're pretty fast, and maybe not as fast as maybe other industries, but it is something we're looking at in earnest. We want to be careful, obviously. We're a regulated financial institution. It's important to protect client information, and so security and things like that are top of mind, and that's really where almost any conversation starts, or at least before you go to a production setting. You want to have that really well understood and locked down. But I think we are moving, fairly quickly on things like Databricks. Around a month ago, we actually had an enterprise version of ChatGPT launched, which has been huge. I don't know, we may be one of at least the first financial institutions to have this. It's a local version, so we have that security aspect to it. But I think the investments we've made from an architecture perspective in things like Databricks and Plotly Dash, residing on an Azure cloud that sits within a CIBC network, it gives us that security and comfort with our tool set to then be able to take that and apply it to use cases, and that's what we're actively working to do.
So Jeff, just a quick question from the cheap seats here. When that Monte Carlos job, quote unquote, that gets run every night, where's it running?
Yeah, so that's being done up on a cloud provider. We used to have it on-prem, but we migrated across, and we've been able to kind of benefit from the parallelization that comes with that, and things like cost management and things as well. Only kind of spinning up when we need the resources and things like that.
So that originally, if it was done in the past, it would have been done in a data center, and of late, you're using your Azure credits or whatever you're using to crunch those numbers every night. Yeah.
Yep.
Got it.
Thank you, Dave. Very good example, Dave, of a question. Anybody have a question, please either raise your hand or unmute yourself, and just like Dave. I see
I do.
Juan has a question.
Yeah. One of the things that I've been wondering is what is one of the best means through which a data scientist can get into the finance sector. And what I mean by that is mostly if I were to have a portfolio project that I can display to a potential employer within the finance sector, what are some of the properties and qualities that you think will really highlight you as a candidate? I mean, anything from data engineering, modeling, visualization, the utilization of AI. I'll be interested in your opinion regarding that.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question. I mean, I think I'd kind of tailor my answer to, I think also, like, where do you want to be involved? Like, are you interested in like data engineering or the UX side of things, or, data science? And so I think, if you can do a project, I think that's great. But I tailor it, with emphasis on your interest. And I think it's important just to have a clear kind of business objective or business value. I think, it's one thing to, do kind of a summary. If you're interested in the UX space, that's great. But, if you're interested in the more, machine learning, data science side of things, pick whether it's stock prediction or, I don't know, a classification project or whatever may have you. I'm just trying, if you can tie it back to something that's relevant to the industry, and can kind of demonstrate a business value and, thinking from that business perspective, I think that's huge. Being able to tell that story, I think, from a business perspective, and then, use your kind of, your data journey on the project to kind of tell that story.
That's what I've seen as
Oh.
well. Just to interject, like I see a lot of projects, Adam and I see a lot of projects out there, and so one, find a topic, that you're knowledgeable about, that you're really interested in, and because that will come across, right? Second, make sure it's business focused, right? There's a lot, or actually not always, well, in finance, yeah, it needs to be business focused, but there's a clear problem that needs to be solved, right? And then as you solve it, the storytelling aspect is not unimportant. I think, Jeff, when you've communicated in the past, you talk about coming from a STEM background, but you've personally added, an A to STEM and made it STEAM. So the artistry aspect, the ability to tell that story, if it can't be expressed, then the person on the other side is not going to internalize or appreciate the value. So I would just kind of affirm what Jeff said there.
And I think another thing too, just to maybe add on, is just, I think simplicity is key, right? Like, wherever you can simplify something to a lowest common denominator, do that, because I think that helps with getting a story across.
Juan, you were going to say something?
Yeah, just a follow-up question. what business objectives are you trying to resolve in your position as of right now? Just to get an example of what that, you know, materializes more objectively.
Yeah, so I mean, it could be anything from kind of summarizing, some of our cost information and exposing that to people so they can drill in, to, it might be, I've worked on kind of a market data prediction projects before. We're going to be, we're looking to kind of operationalize how we do kind of language models in the bank, and the team's working towards building out a framework in that space, with RAG and leveraging that, because it is, it's important to be kind of subject specific and focused. And so those are all different examples. And I mean, there's a classic kind of, you can do like stock prediction or hedging portfolios and things like that. I think it all depends on your interests and kind of where you want to go to.
Thank you for your question, Juan. Jeff, going back to, I do want to talk a little bit more about AI that Jeannie has mentioned. You mentioned that you build Plotly, you use Plotly and you build Dash apps. Is any AI or large language models integrated into those apps?
No, not in Plotly yet, anyway, at least per se. But I think it is a journey. It's funny. Like it was probably around last summer, I started looking at Databricks Dolly, the language model they had there, and just experimenting with that. And then, from a kind of performance and accuracy kind of thing, it kind of fell on the back burner. And then earlier this year, I think in the spring, right, like DBRX got announced. So, sort of picked that back up and looked at how we might be able to use it. And one of the use cases would have been like, document summarization or question answering based on a document. And that kind of, was going to take some time to kind of get up to speed on the architecture side of things. And then lo and behold, a month ago, we got an enterprise version of ChatGPT. And then even, just more recently, you're starting to hear, the announcement around like Strawberry and Orion. And so I think my point here is that, if you can't do something now at least in the Gen AI space, kind of wait 6 or 9 months and you might be able to get done for you. And so, I think kind of a roundabout answer to your question is like, it's coming for us. It's just figuring out how to kind of optimally do that. And I think more, as I just mentioned, like more and more tools and resources are coming available to make that easier, right? And so it's how do we set ourselves up to leverage those developments, even when we don't necessarily know what they're going to be, right? Like we will be, I think, in a different place, 6 to 12 months from now. And so how do we set ourselves up for that and build tools and infrastructures and architectures to be able to support that? But to answer your question, I think coming are, I mentioned that enterprise version of ChatGPT, so we have access to that now, as at an enterprise level, which means, across kind of the bank, not just in capital markets, which is where I sit, but we're going to have bespoke kind of language models coming that can tailor to specific tasks. So,
and from your experience working with large language models and others in your department. Can you share a little bit more about that? Like, which models do you use? Do you have a preference? Why?
Not too much. So to be honest, I've just kind of been in that experimentation phase, at least for me personally. But again, we do have access to ChatGPT 3.5 and 4. Experimented. Looked at Dolly and looked into DBRX and things like that. But yeah, at least in terms of me personally, it's not to say others throughout the bank. I know for a fact there's other kind of language model NLP type use cases, going on, but just not with me specifically.
Are you responsible? Is a big part of your role actually creating Dash applications?
It has been, yeah, and so I'm, at least, personally, I'm on the order of probably, I don't know, 20 to 30 different apps. That's just me. And then, we've got, across the floor, there's other people building stuff. The way our architecture is, we've got Databricks and Plotly, and it's basically there available for everyone to use. And so people have been doing just that.
Cool. All right, well, let's go a little bit into the Plotly and Dash. A reminder to the community, if you have any questions about AI or things that Jeff is working on, feel free to raise your hand or put the question in the chat. I'll try to take them as they come. Jeff, regarding Plotly, so when was Plotly and Dash first or introduced to CIBC?
Yeah, at least our enterprise version. I think we're closing in on a couple of years now. I remember kind of, the server, well, and including access to data. So I remember kind of a couple of years ago, just before Christmas, kind of, getting almost like the green light and access to the environment, and then, kind of quickly starting to learn the how to do things and spin up apps. So I think we're closing in on like a couple of years now. So
A couple years. But did you personally, or people you know in your department, use open source Dash before Dash Enterprise, or you went straight into Dash Enterprise?
yeah, so we had been doing some stuff, I think, before on the open source side of things, albeit nothing productionized. I think kind of in the experimentation, getting ready. I mean, we knew Enterprise Dash was coming. I personally, I primarily use it here, but I personally tried it out on just a personal project at home and used open source and been able to build and publish an app. Just set up an account on Python Anywhere, and I was able to kind of build an app there. So I've used open source, but primarily I'm enterprise here at work. So
Cool. And Plotly, did you use Plotly before using Dash Enterprise? Did you play around with some graphs?
starting, yeah, for sure. It's it hasn't been. I mean, it hasn't been a super long time for me on Python, if I'm being honest too. It was kind of, I came into Python around the same time, so it maybe complicated my learning curve a bit. But yeah.
You learned Python at the same time that you were working with Dash
It was
Enterprise?
around the same time. Yeah, it was around the same time. So
I hear that a lot. Like a lot of people who, from the community at least, right? Where I have a lot of access to, they say, you know what, I love Plotly and Dash so much that this is what led me to learn Python, right? I wanted to use this to build a project, and I saw that I can build like interactive web applications, but I needed to know Python. And because you need to know really the basics of Python, that's how they learned Python.
yeah, and for me too, I mean, a lot of stuff would be like our dashboards in the past might have been like an Excel file, and then you'd have to go and refresh that and then PDF it and then email it out to people, or you get a bit more advanced in things like tools like Spotfire or Tableau, and those are good, and you can do things like build put custom SQL and stuff into that, but then exposing that to people. I mean, you can do things like you can publish things via server and whatnot on that, but then I mean, I think just with Plotly and Dash, there's a level of customization you can do. In fact that it's Python native, and really, and so you can, all your analytics, machine learning, whatever, you can basically do right in the same environment or notebook, and
Right.
and then just feed it into the app, and it's all just there for you. So it's really seamless. And then I like to, like, going back to Dave's comment on just STEM going to Steam and adding that art component, like you can literally go in and customize like fonts and drop downs and locations and positions that of the content in your app that you just don't have it in a lot of other tools that are out there. So that's been one of the biggest things for me, and being able to get functionality in very quickly as well. So I mean,
But
my
that
boss
functionality, Jeff, that functionality in that context, it's not like how to get from A to B, but it's more like what's the experience, right? Because I've heard, like I think you've mentioned, it just encourages adoption. If if it's janky, people aren't going to use it.
Yeah, and that Dave too, and I think also just the getting it out to people. Like it's literally, I just send them a web link, and I can customize the web link as well to a specific user. Like I can have my base root URL, but I can add that for an equity desk. I can add that for an interest rate desk, and so I can have a general app, but then I can customize the functionality of that app based on the user, which is very neat. And then the fact that it's just a web link, we can see it on our phones too. So you have the capability for someone to be sitting in a meeting now and see something on their phone, as opposed to go back to the desk and be like, hey, can you send me this? Like you can have it right there. It's at your fingertips all the time. And so just, I think the capability with tools like this is huge.
Huh, I've never appreciated when you say, so you have apps for which you have variants, like mutations, if you will, that serve the specific need of and like, no doubt, like you're not undertaking the effort unless it's worth it, but you have a very specific version of that app for that person based on their requirements. Yeah.
Yeah. So one app, for example, we have is basically funding charges basically across the entire trading floor. And we have, I don't know what the number is, it's dozens, if not hundreds of permutations of each trading desk. And then within that, there's different levels of, that business unit or trading desk. And so you can cut the data in, I don't know, 6 different ways. And so if an equity person comes to this app and they want to see their kind of lowest level of that data cut, they have to go in and click through the 6 different things. And that's 6 button clicks and 6 data refreshes they have to wait for. Or what we would have built is basically you can go in, once they can put in the kind of level they want to see, and then copy a web link to that specific instance. And so what happens is now when they click on, they can just save that down to their browser. When they click on that web link, it's going to populate the app with their specific level of data. And so instead of just a general app and them having to go and dig in, it's just there for them. And so an equity person may not want to, probably don't want to see the interest rate desk stuff. And so they can just go straight to their own thing. And I mean, it sounds simple, but if you can save someone those 6 button clicks, it makes the app experience richer.
Yeah, I saw it in a SciPy presentation by Johnson Matthey. The words that they used were, it was deceptively simple, right? Which kind of inferred, that the person who developed the app in that particular case, or the specific form of that app, went to some length to make sure it was super simple, so that person didn't have to do the 6 button clicks, right? But that they also were able to do it relatively quickly enough, without having to, like take a month to do it. They could do it fairly quickly.
Oh yeah, very quickly. And the other thing too is, I think, just more technically, I think too, is as you start to deal with more data and higher cardinality data, and so I mentioned, we have thousands of clients, we have dozens, if not more, trading desks. To render a graphic or a Plotly chart or something like that, it can start to add up, and so that also diminishes the user experience. So we've also also had luck with being able to actually cache the app layout, and so when the user basically comes and clicks on your link, they're viewing a cached version of your page as opposed to having to rebuild all of the plots, right? Because as that dimensionality grows, the time to render a graphic takes longer. And so that's something else you can do here, right? Because it's all Python. You can build in things like schedulers and caching and all this stuff right in the app. And a bit of a learning curve, but once you get the hang of it, it's quite straightforward.
Thank you, Jeff. Jeff, I have a couple of questions here from the community. I'd like to see if it's something you can answer right now. And sometimes we can't answer the questions on the spot, which we'll email later the response for. I have a question from Abhinav. How do you integrate Plotly into your quantitative analytics workflow, primarily as a front-end visualization tool, or do you also leverage it in like your back-end processes? Can you, as a general question, can you describe your approach and any challenges that you've encountered?
Yeah, I mean, so I know like our quantitative analytics team, I think will have their own dashboards. And if I'm being honest, I'm not very familiar with those. I know on, say, our support side of things, they have a dashboard for monitoring, overnight run type things, I think I want to say is in Dash. And then for me specifically, things like, we have one app that does, builds parameters for one of our kind of pricing models, and those need to be calibrated. And within the app, it does, some PCA analysis and refreshes those, and is able to show history of the parameter through time. So that's one example where, as a desk specifically, we've done that. And so, we've leveraged, another advantage of enterprise, you have access to things like celery tasks and Redis databases. And so, with that, when I originally deployed the app for this thing, it was doing the kind of PCA on the fly. And if you go over a certain amount of time, basically the app loses connection to the server or what have you. And so what we had to do is kind of be smart about it, and build a task and a process in the background to do kind of the analytics and the number crunching in the background, save that down, and then pull in the result when you bring the app up. But that's kind of one example of where we're doing it. Another example, is there comes a point, I think, where you want to leverage the power of Databricks as well. It's got, obviously, you can write Spark and parallelize better, I think, in there. And so another thing you can do is kind of build your model, use a notebook within Databricks, schedule that up to run. One example, we've built some regression models, save that down in Azure Blob, and then within Plotly pull that kind of model into Plotly and kind of serve to the user there. So it's just a couple examples of different ways you can do things. You can do it right in, I think, Dash, or you can do it on Databricks and leverage kind of the power that comes with that side of things.
Another question here, Jeff, from Christopher. When transitioning to Dash Enterprise from open source, were you able to lift and shift most of your code?
Yeah, absolutely. It's basically the same thing. I mean, everything you can do in open source, you can do in enterprise. I think some of the big advantages in enterprises are you have access to call it a couple more functions. You get things like Dash Design Kit that arguably make some of the coding a little cleaner. You get, it's very easy to deploy what's called or use what's called a workspace. And so it's basically a dedicated IDE for your coding. You can basically see live updates of changes you make in your code, which is very nice. You can attach things like Postgres and Redis databases. And then you get access to the helpline. I haven't had to use it a ton. I think another huge thing about Plotly is the community. I mean, most kind of walls I run into are solved pretty easily with a Google search and seeing either Stack Overflow or what have you. People have dealt with whatever issue you're dealing with before, and then the handful kind of cases where it's harder or haven't been able to solve it that way. You just ring up the helpline and they come back very quickly. There's a good community there as well. So I think those are some of the advantages that come with enterprise. So, but yeah, but it's largely it's lift and shift. Yeah, like literally you just take your code and chuck it in enterprise and you're away to the races.
Thanks, Jeff. Great questions from Christopher and Abhinav. Great question, community. Keep them coming. I love them. Jeff, we have talked about Plotly and Dash for a few minutes now, and I know you mentioned that you would be happy to share a demo or two of a Dash apps that you have. So I think this is a great time to do so if you want to share your screen.
Sure. Let me take a crack at sharing here. Oh, it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
So let me see, how can I, let me see 1 second. Participants. Does this help?
Yep, looks like we're good to go there. I'll switch in and out of two. I'll just go on the application side of things. Let me switch in and out. Let me know if you can see this.
It's loading. Yes, we see the sunburst and yeah.
Okay, do you see just the app? You're not seeing the camera?
I see the whole browser. I see the two tabs, the Zoom tab and the IM dashboard tab.
And you can see yourself talking as well, or?
Yeah, we see the participants on the side, yes.
Oh, you do? Okay, let me try and notice it. Okay. Okay, so this is a dashboard. Well, I'll start off by saying, so when financial institutions deal with each other, and notably big banks, typically they'll have a collateral arrangement between the two of them. And so, Adam, if you and I are banks and we do a trade, and let's say that trade has a value of $100 to you, what would happen each day is I would give you basically $100 of collateral, basically to insulate you from the credit risk to me on that exposure. The wrinkle here is, though, that $100, while it's worth $100 today, it might not be worth $100 tomorrow. And so what happens if that 100 becomes 150, and so it's worth more to you, or let's say it goes to 50, it's worth less to you, and now I've given you too much collateral to protect against that. So the first example, me giving you the $100 to protect you on that trade is what's referred to as variation margin. But there's also this concept of initial margin. And initial margin is really there to protect against those kind of worst case swings where you're still exposed. And it's actually, a reasonably recent regulatory framework's been put in place that mandates financial institutions to post this stuff to each other. And it's really to protect against those, in that example, the plus 50, minus 50 moves where you're still exposed. So this is an app I've built to basically summarize that. It looks a little messy. What I've done is I've masked and or randomized a bunch of the data. So like multiplied by random numbers so there's nothing kind of proprietary being shown here. The graph up top's a little messy. It's a little smoother in the actual when you're looking at the real data. But if you look at this, what this is showing on the negative side is basically where CIBC's pledged. So we have basically securities out the door. And on the top is where we have securities in the door. And you can see here, again, these aren't real numbers, but the quantum we're talking about here is B on the order of billions. So we're talking about quite a big, quite a big kind of quantum of market value. And so, we want to be aware of these things and be able to see them through time and sort of where our assets are, are being, kind of given to people. And so what this allows us to do just that. And so you can kind of see through time how this is, ebbing and flowing. And, if this were to start to grow, and it has in the past, and, you start to, if you want to start to dig in and you can ask questions like, okay, how can I minimize this? What sort of assets are at the door? Who has them? Those kind of questions. And, I won't do it now, but like you can, do different cuts of this data. A user can go in and, choose to see, whether it be by asset type, so, equity, like a bond, things like that, by counterparty, or even by the underlying business as well. That's kind of driving the exposure. You can see things like, how many trades, again, this is, randomized, but, how many trades, what's our number of trades under this framework, what's happening through time on that, how many counterparties. Something broke here when I did the masking on this, so it hasn't filled out the full history, but that's what that is. Similar with kind of business mix here, this should add up to 100, but again, I did random numbers. So you can kind of see what's driving your kind of overall IAM balance. If someone wants, they can, go in if they want to dig into a specific exposure, they can use the Sunburst for that, and kind of drill down and see, if they want to go down to the client level and see who's driving that, or kind of where our assets are sitting. They can do that, and then sort of similar on the receive side as well. So you've got kind of what CIBC has put out the door, what we've got in the door, kind of from our banking or financial counterparts. And then, further down below, sort of some other IAM uses. So things like clearinghouses or specific corporate agreements we have are shown down here. And again, the data is not showing up because it got blanked out, so I could hide the client name and stuff like that. So yeah, so this kind of a dashboard that basically shows that. The coloring is actually valuable too, because each client we have or bank we deal with will have a specific legal agreement with them saying what can be pledged as assets. Can you pledge Canadian government bonds, Canadian equities, Japanese government bonds, those types of things. And not all agreements support all things. And because of that, there becomes an optimization component here, in that each asset has a different value, and ideally for initial margin, you want to post the one that is the cheapest for you to post. And so what this allows you to do is go in by client and kind of look across and say, am I posting the cheapest thing possible here? Or could I substitute, I don't know, use a crude example, USD cash for a Japanese government bond, which would have a better carry for us, and kind of claw back some of that economic value that's been posted out suboptimally. So fair bit of data here. This is one of those examples where the layout itself is cached, and so refreshes on a schedule, and then when the user comes, the thing refreshes on the order of seconds for them, as opposed to a fair bit longer. So
Nice.
Got a second example I can show as well after this.
And is this an app that's used every day? Is this an app that's used like once a week? And then is this an app that's used by a lot of people or a few people? And then is there a specific action? It's kind of three-part question with that.
Yeah, so I don't have, to be honest, Dave, I don't have visibility. It is something that's being used regularly across multiple departments. So it's not just within our desk, but there are other kind of business function users use it as well. I want to say it's fairly frequent, on the order of daily kind of thing. Tracking user statistics is something I'm looking at. I know Plotly 5 has that automatically. We're not on that just yet. But I was experimenting last week with some of the tracking mechanisms, and I was able to get that working as well. You can actually do it on Plotly 4. I learned as well. So to specifically answer your question, I don't know the kind of the breadth of the usage here, but it is something. This is one of our more kind of actively used apps. And then in terms of the business function, yeah, it's really summarizing kind of quickly and holistically in one place, where our balance is, and who they're sitting with, and kind of the associated economics with that as well. So it allows someone to go in here and kind of quickly see kind of how we're trending, and then also start to ask questions around optimality and can we do stuff that basically saves us money. So
got it. And I guess before this, it would be more like pulling the data from different spots. It'd be a lot more ad hoc. Yeah.
So this actually replaced a PDF that someone was sending out. I want to say maybe quarterly, and that person would go in, or a lot of the functionality in that PDF, and go in and have to like refresh it. And I don't know that they had the daily history view. I can't remember. You see at the top here, and some of the, obviously you don't have that drillable functionality in a PDF for really be able to, re-express things by counterparty or business or things like that. So you don't have that kind of interactivity with the PDF. But yeah, it took you from a frequency of like quarterly, and potentially being surprised when by something when it comes out that quarter, to being able to go in here in a daily and see it on demand.
Right. So if, so I see this kind of lumping, in January 2024, obviously this is random numbers, but, if you don't get the right, like 3-month rate, you could miss that. You go, whoa, hey, it's trending up. We need to like cut that down. Yeah.
Yeah. Or you'd have to have a sense that costs were creeping up and be, go and ask either the person to refresh that intra quarter or be able or find something to track yourself. So you have to build basically a manual or custom process on the side.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Jeff, I have a question here before we move on to the next app. I want to give the community members an opportunity to ask any questions about this Dash app, the layout, things that Jeff is using. Iman, thank you for the quote by Edward Tuft. And I have a question from Brock. Considering the optimization problem with posting assets, do you use any mathematical optimization, for example, integer programming with binary decision variables?
Yes, to answer the question directly, yes. It's something another project I'm working on now. We actually have one of our vendor products has an optimization algorithm inherent to it. It's simplex. And so we're working on basically productionizing that kind of as we speak. And there is an associated Plotly app that's ready to go once we have the data for that. And it'll basically be able to display the results and show us which kind of counterparties and assets to target. So I think, direct.
Taking one step back into the question, because there's something I'm not completely sure about. And I wouldn't be surprised if others here are not sure. What does Brock mean by optimization problem with posting assets?
So basically, you have a host of different things that you can post under these agreements. And so if I take a more simple example, let's say at that $100 trade you and I had, Adam, let's say that collateral I could give you either US dollar cash, I could give you Chilean pesos, I could give you Venezuelan government bonds, all these different things. And each one of those has a different kind of utility function to it or cost to it. And so USD cash is, US economy is, one of the most reliable economies in the world. And so that has a ton of value to it. Cash is highly liquid. You can move it around very quickly. So it's a huge advantage in giving you that. So it's expensive for me to give you that USD cash. If I'm able to, it would be better for me to give you something like, say a Venezuelan or Zimbabwe as an extreme example government bond, which less liquid, might be more subject to kind of value changes and things like that, but still satisfies the agreement and offers you protection. And I take that USD cash and I go use it for something else. And so that's really where each one of those things has an associated kind of funding or carry cost with it. And so you want to be deploying your resources as optimally as possible and using your kind of more highly valued assets for kind of more highly valued tasks, if that makes sense.
Yeah, got it. Thank you, Jeff. That makes it a lot clearer. Yeah. All right. I don't see any other question regarding that first app. So let's jump into the second app demo you wanted to show us.
Sure. So let me know. Okay, this one I've just done as a recording for a couple of reasons. Just made it kind of easier to present. You see that, Adam? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so and also I've sped up some of the load times on it just for full disclosure. But what you're seeing here is, the apps I've built, this itself is an app, and it's basically I built basically a almost like an app store of all the apps. So rather than a user having to remember 20 or 30 different links, whatever it may have you, they can just go to this and basically serve themselves. They can bookmark this page and then just go and click into what they want to see. And so doing that, if we were to click into this kind of XVIA riskViewer one here at the bottom. It'll take you to this page and you can kind of see kind of 4 apps, across the top. So there's kind of 4 apps in one here. Each tab does its own thing. And on the far most right one is one where it's basically it's attempting to do some risk prediction. So what this is, and this talks to kind of that framework I'd mentioned kind of earlier in our call today, where we as a desk, we're sitting kind of in the middle of the trading floor. We're exposed to a ton of different risks, right? We have foreign exchange risk, commodity risks, credit risks, funding risks, interest rate risks, term structured interest rate risks. And so all of these, we have all these different kind of moving parts. And so it would be, great to be able to predict how those are going to change through time. And those are a function of things like foreign exchange rates and interest rates and credit risks, credit curves and things like that themselves, gas and oil. And so what this app is doing is within Databricks, use a notebook to basically spin up, I think, hundreds of regressions, to each one of these risk factors, save them down to Azure blob storage, and then pull those regression models in to Plotly Dash. And then what a user can go in here is go in, and I'll just disclaimer again, this isn't a productionized app. It's not usable if you're, data science, kind of multicollinearity, alarm bells are going off. You're right in that. There's some of that kind of going on here, but this is more to just show you kind of the art of the possible, I think, with, combining Databricks, cloud and Dash together. What a user can go in and do here is kind of go in, review the regression models. So click on one and see how the prediction's doing versus the actual risk on that day, both for foreign exchange and interest rate risk. They can drill into that. But then they can actually go in and change some of the market data. So for example, if I want to see, the dollar CAD exchange rate, I want to see what happens if I take that 4 figures lower, 4 big figures lower, I can do that, put it in, and then it's going to pump that into my regression model and recalculate all of the associated risks. And so again, this isn't productionized. This is actually I would say a reasonably hard data science problem here, given you have tons of market data that's very can often move in a very similar way, and hence that multicollinearity. But this is just an example, kind of, or proof of state of the architecture and tying in Databricks and Plotly together to give something in the machine learning space.
Really cool. I do have a Mike here that would like to ask us a question.
Yep.
Oh, Mike, I think you're still on mute because you said you were calling in by phone. I unmuted you on the screen, but I'm not sure. Let's see if I can unmute you via phone.
I do have a question after he's done. If I can again.
Fine, you can ask your question until Mike and I figure this out with the phone.
Yeah. So it seems that you have a repertoire of really amazing applications, and I imagine those are internal apps that you have. But I've been wanting to find really good Dash applications that really come from the finance sector and succinctly and functionally summarize information that is really useful to stakeholders. So if you have any recommendations as to where I can see those examples, I would really appreciate it.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I'm not sure, to be honest. I know there's a Databricks marketplace you might be able to take a look at. I know Plotly has their Plotly 500. I don't know if I know David had worked on that, and you can see some neat stuff through that. Not sure it's explicitly in the finance space. A lot of these, if they are developed by banks, or will be proprietary, and people, we won't want them made public. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't know off the top of my head in terms of kind of publicly available resources. But even I think there might be an app section within Plotly as well. I see someone, looks like Chris just posted. Yeah, so maybe check that out, and you might be able to get some ideas there.
It is a conundrum though, Juan, because like finance people, they do lots of cool stuff, but they can't talk about it. It gets a bit like pharma, right? So this is, you're actually experiencing a bit of a coup here. Actually, Jeff, anonymizing some of this stuff and showing some of this stuff is, not a regular event, right?
It's seductive.
I would say though, even if I were hiring someone in the analytics space, the finance is important, but again, it comes down to the role. And I mean, if you can show an app in a subject that's you're interested in, whether it be sports or healthcare or whatever, I think you can still demonstrate that storytell and show people how you think and how you work. And I think, again, like you might not be able to do the derivative pricing, depending on the role, you would need to do that obviously, but a lot of I think you can show a lot of the data science and analytics skill through any project really. And I think it is highly transferable.
Cool. Jeff, 1 second. Mike, can you hear me? Yes, I can hear. All right, Mike. We can't connect you via screen, so let me ask your question and I'll share it with Jeff. So yeah, Jeff, Mike's saying this is really impressive, especially the where you're drilling down through the correlation, your dashboard. How do your customers, people who are using this app, how is their reception to it? And the last part, Mike? And how much time do you have to spend supporting them when you release an app? Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, no, good questions, relevant questions. My customers anywhere are basically all the other sales and trading desks within capital markets or global markets. So we don't have anything kind of facing externally, which also has the advantage that everything sits on CIBC's internal network. But I think, in terms of, I think the response has been great. I think people are happy with just the interactivity you can get with these things, right? Like you can drill down, you can show charts on the variables that you want to see them on. You have that ability to do customization. And so, I'll get a question sometimes from my boss in the morning. He went, "Can I see this?" And it's in the afternoon. And that's very powerful. And and you can, we've been able to do that, with these apps. And I think that's huge. And the level of support, it hasn't really been time consuming, if I'm being honest. I mean, if you have to add a new feature, I mean, that's going to take time, obviously, but it's been more around the feature adds as opposed to like stability has been great. I mean, sometimes, maybe you have a network issue. It's quite rare. I've run into issues sometimes. You might get something funky with how the cache loads on app deployment, but you can resolve it pretty quickly. So yeah, I wouldn't say I spend a lot of time on the actual support of the apps themselves. Where it is more like you open the app and you see your data's gone up in a way that doesn't make any sense. It's a data issue. It's not an app issue. And so, you go back to the owner of that data and say, "Hey, can you take a look at this?" And then they go and fix it. And so that's been another kind of advantage of these apps. We had an example of that just yesterday, the day before. My boss reached out and he's like, "Why is this kind of spiked?" And then so you go back to the person who owns the data and say, "Hey, can you take a look at this?" "Oh yeah, we had the wrong rate in here." They repush it and now your data's clean again. So it's been great with that. And so I don't, trying to spot that in a big Excel file or something where you don't have the history sitting right next to it, it'd be difficult, if not maybe even impossible. So.
Thank you, Jeff. I want to give the opportunity for one last question from the community by John. There's 3 thumbs up here. So dashboard load times are always a challenge, especially with large data sources. What are some general tips to optimize your dashboard? And is there anything Plotly specifically offers that optimizes performance?
Yeah, I'd say 3 things. I have 3 different ways I've worked. One is you just query your data on demand every time. If your data is small, that works well, and you ensure you're getting kind of live data all the time. Another is you can attach something like a Redis database where you do the data load or the more complex operations on a schedule, and then basically just have that sitting in the database like right on the server on the app side, and so you can pull that in pretty quickly. The most success I've had, and kind of the one I'm most excited about, is the caching layer. And so you can cache your expensive data operations. Again, have those run on using AP Scheduler. It's a package you can download, and then Flask caching. And I think there's a page there's somewhere in the Plotly help section, there's a page on caching that can get you started. And I was actually able to figure out how to actually cache the layout. And so, if you have charts like that first app I demoed, that was taking on, I don't know, 8 to 10 even seconds. And it kind of hurts the user experience. Like I can appreciate your pain. And so you can actually cache that layout, just have it sitting there. And then when the app loads, it's loading basically an instance of the cache. And so it's quite quick. And so that's where I've had a lot of success. And so those are kind of three different ways you could do it. Each have their kind of advantages, disadvantages, but yeah, Loa, looks like the page has been posted there. So
Thank you, Jeff. It's 1:01, so we're 1 minute after. Let's close out like we usually do with words of wisdom. So we do like to end our hangout with like one concrete suggestion or advice for our viewers. What advice would you like to share with our audience today?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, it's maybe just two words. It's just start. And I think Jensen Wong said it at Summit too, right? It's just start in this stuff, right? I think there's a ton of interesting stuff here. Depending on what you want to do in data science, I mean, I think get an understanding of SQL, Python, Spark, Cloud, the algorithmic side of thing for machine learning, and then the UX, right? All of this, I think you don't need to be an expert necessarily in all of those things, but they're all, I think, hugely valuable in the data science space. Work on telling that story. But I think fundamentally just start. And I think, there's a learning curve to this stuff. You're going to run into headaches and walls and problems, but you don't know what those are now. So just start and you'll find those, and you'll find that there is a community for this stuff. You can get help online. You can get help through things like this or the community forums and things like that. And if you do a little bit each day, I think you'll find, at least I've found in my journey, the stuff will start to compound and you get more comfortable and you get onto the more advanced things, right? Like I couldn't have been able to implement a caching layer if I didn't first know how to display a data table, right? And so just start with this stuff, take Python courses, take courses, whatever may have you, and just start playing around, find out what you like and what you're interested in, and do it in I think, I think it's easiest to do it in the areas where you have the subject matter expertise. So it's probably easiest to start in, working with data that's in your job or in something you're close to, because you'll know it, and so you know how to tell that story better, and you'll know how to, enhance a feature for a machine learning model or something like that. So it's just, I think just start and go from there.
Great advice. Just start. Don't hesitate too much. Take it one bite at a time, and you'll see yourself slowly growing.
For sure.
Jeff, thank you so much. Community members, thank you so much for joining, for your wonderful questions, for your comments, suggestions, for sharing all these links. Love this interactive hangout. Don't forget, we have a Plotly community meetup tomorrow at 1 p.m. If you're interested, just email me, adam@plotly.com. Again, it's adam@plotly.com, and I'll send you the invite for the meetup. Jeff, as always, thank you so much, and I'll see you around.
For sure. Thanks, Adam.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.